Hey everyone, I'm here today with Lee McGilvary, a singer-songwriter from Glasgow and the founder of Gathering South Sessions. How's things?
Hi, Neve. Lovely to be here chatting with you. Things are great, thank you.
Oh, of course. I had just in preparation before coming on to chat with yourself, I'd had a wee look at your website, and immediately I'm kind of struck with this sense that you're very in touch with your Scottish roots. Is that something that's important to you?
Yeah, so extremely important in most things I do. I think culture is something we should all be passionate about and thrive in and whatnot. But really, it's something I've learned to grow over the years, through my music and through immersion in said culture, through music and arts and things. Um, yeah, I guess I particularly found myself becoming a Scots folk songwriter, after all my years, being in metal bands in my teens and sort of these sort of things, and becoming a songwriter in my early 20s. I started off more, I guess, contemporary in songwriting, with more modern influences. But over the years, I've just grown to love traditional music so much, and obviously that is a key to the immersion in Scottish culture. And through that, just going to events and gigs and meeting people and festivals and all these sort of things, you just find yourself a part of it, and the passion certainly grows, and the more connected you feel with it. And I feel like the further we look back in history in general, the more we can learn about ourselves instead of looking ahead all the time. I'm not saying look back in such a way that it holds you back, but to learn from our history and learn from our ancestors and the stories and the songs and all these things, I think is very important to hold on to.
Absolutely. And so what was something that sort of prompted that switch from going from the heavier side of music to more traditional folky music?
Um, I guess there's like the stages in life that I was going through, through a transition into my 20s and things. But really, personally, I always wanted to have a band. And yeah, sure, there was a thriving scene when I was younger, and I tried once or twice to get bands together and keep something consistent. But the only one that had mild success, all the guys were much older than me and went on to have proper jobs and families and things. So I was my aim that I set myself was to then just build it. If I can't get a band right now, then I'll just start writing my own songs and get a band around me. And really, like all these years later, I mean, I guess I was like 18 then, and I'm 32 now. I'm still in a way trying to get a band together and things, and I've realized that it's not yeah, it's not such a fixed thing. You can have great musicians come and go from you and just work and collaborate with different people as I go. So I'm still working on that to a degree and getting musicians together for different recordings and performances. Um, but yeah, when I realized that, I guess I just wanted to write songs, and through those first handful of years, I realized how emotional songs could be and how much you could touch people's hearts and really help change people's lives, just by sharing some wisdom or a beautiful melody and these things. But I guess it was some particular influences at the time. There was bands I was listening to, like Alexis on Fire, and one of the main guys came from that, Setting Colour. He was a big early influence on my singing and my songwriting. Um, so it was that reckoning, or sorry, that recognition of realizing, oh, I don't need to be a ruckus, hardy young male teenager. I can be a gentle songwriter and, help share a message and help share my own experiences and try and open up to the world that way. And maybe that'll be a good way to connect with the world and connect with other people. And yeah, I'm still working on that, but I'm happy with the journey that I've chosen.
Definitely, yeah. And I think you touched on something there that was a topic that came up in an earlier interview. So this idea that being a singer-songwriter, you have this ability to kind of touch the hearts of many people and relate to them through all these personal experiences. And we'd had this conversation earlier about the influence of AI and all these kind of like pre-generated like musical beats and how you can layer vocals on top of a track that aren't yours. What's in your opinion, where is the music industry headed with that? Like, have you had much experience with that?
No, to be honest, like on my own personal journey, I've tried to keep things authentic to myself, and there's still so much to learn. that for me has meant that over the years I've really just tried to focus on my craft and on my songwriting and on my guitar skills and these things and just keep gigging away and so forth. And I've never really tried to complicate things in terms of digital and so forth. So I've in my own personal journey so far I've tried to keep things really simple and just grounded. So like looking on into the future and AI and these technologies that are coming in. I've not paid it too much thought yet, because I'm sort of still caught up in my thing, trying to like learn more about history and learn, just steep myself more in the culture, as I've mentioned. So that's just my own personal perspective, and I'm at that stage where I'm trying to maybe experiment with different effects and pedals and things and open up, and sort of catch up to a degree, creatively with a lot of my peers and things that are doing some really cool things like that. But I guess if I was to have an opinion on it, I guess it can be a beautiful thing. It's just scary, like any new technology. There's going to be pros and cons, and people are going to do weird, negative things with it. Some people are going to do really beautiful things. I do fear for the connectivity of human beings and in our day-to-day lives and these things, but that's a whole other topic. Technology and future and all these things. But I guess music is going to change with it. So to a degree, as long as we always remain rooted to, our tethers and our roots, it's fun to explore the airy-fairy future possibilities of, exploring and experimenting with these things. As long as it's all, um, you know, cared for in a way and it's all intentional and in a way that, is still human.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we've just got to go with the flow at the end of the day. That is, time and future. Um, so yeah, it can be a beautiful thing, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That There's a I would definitely stress the importance of staying like connected and kind of tethered to your roots and not maybe getting too caught up in it. But again, there's pros and cons to everything. You
Yeah,
touched
I
on this
think
earlier. Say again?
I was just gonna say the future is gonna come either way, so we might as well enjoy the moment whilst it's at, and don't forget about the past too quickly because we're still learning, we're still processing things, we're never ready for the future, so we just need to know that it's gonna come and not rush into it, I guess.
That's very true. And kind of speaking of your past, you run Gathering South sessions, which won Folk Club of the Year last year. You obviously put quite some time into giving authentic folk music a space. What made you start Gathering South?
Um, I mean, so it's 5 years old now, and the whole folk club award thing took me off my feet. It wasn't something that it just sort of happened very quickly, and couldn't quite believe it before I knew it was on the stage there. But I've been doing my own thing as a songwriter for properly for about 10 years now, since being in Glasgow and trying to give myself a name and things, and it sort of came from that. As a songwriter, particularly, in my style of music, where um, it's just better if things are more intimate that way. I think even touching on technology again, a lot of gigs these days, people are on their phones and things, and that's fine. But it'd be nice if people were more mindful about it. You get people that will really just record everything on their phone, and even some metal gigs I've been to in recent times, people don't even mosh as much as they used to. So it's just touching on that connectivity between the artist and the audience, really, and how the future is coming on fast, and just trying to hold on to that connectivity. So, as a songwriter and as many in my position would, find that we just thrive better in a really intimate setting. And that's something I always wanted more of myself. And I guess there wasn't much of that about. There was obviously the world famous So Far sessions, which do sort of intimate sort of settings, but I wanted to create something more grassroots, something more Glasgow, something is more from a musician for musicians and for the audience. But although I'm saying all this, it was kind of on a whim. It was actually my good friend Chris Blackmore, who runs Holy Smokes Records. He had held one or two or more. I can't remember how much because this was sort of before I met him. I think he held some house concerts, and as we were becoming friends, he held a little one in a house that he was living in at the time. This was when I was in Given Hill, and I lived on Daisy Street for a while. Um, and he lived around the corner, and he had me on in a little house concert, and I went back to my flatmates that night, so buzzing about it, and they were buzzing to do one as well. So we held one, and it went down a treat. And then a friend that was there asked me to do one for his birthday, So I done one for his birthday, and then that was when I decided to like give it a name and create a socials page and get photos and videos taken and stuff. So totally on a whim and just happened organically, really. And it's just something that I, as an artist, experienced, and I thought this is amazing. We more of it. The people around me were up for helping and collaborating, and just I put on that first couple, and there you go. That's sort of how it started, and it's grown arms and limbs since then. But in many ways, I feel like I'm still just beginning. I guess after 5 years of graft, it does take a lot of my time and energy, especially when I'm a working musician and trying to be an artist and a songwriter at the same time, and out gigging and all these things. It takes a lot of labor of love, so to speak. But yeah, I feel like it's a necessary cog in any music scene or any community. Yeah, again, touching on our history with our ancestors, because that's how they used to do things even before folk clubs were a thing. When the folk revival in the 60s, 70s, people would just sing around pubs or in houses. So it's trying to hark back to that as well. I consider myself a passionate contributor to my culture, whether it's through myself as a songwriter and a performer, or what I'm doing with Gathering South, trying to nurture this and give a space for this. Um, but yeah, I still get imposter syndrome and realize, holy jings, this is all me doing this. This is all a bit mad, but it all makes it worth it when the events finally happen and the musicians have a really immersive experience and they're connected with the audience and people in the audience are like, wow, this is beautiful. Um, so yeah, I'm passionate about it and I want to keep it going for as long as I can.
Absolutely. And you'd mentioned there imposter syndrome, which again is a topic that's come up in quite a few interviews that I've had. How do you go about kind of dealing with that elephant in the room, so to speak?
Well, I find it playful in a way. It's something that is obviously kind of maybe anxiety inducing or fearful for some people at the beginning, but the longer you do things, I guess the realization for me was that everyone's just winging it, you know? Don't take it all too seriously. You're just doing something which the universe has put you on and it feels natural, it feels right, it's perfectly within your capabilities. And never ever ever let fear hold you back from doing absolutely anything in your life. I'm trying not to go into too much like philosophical knowledge here, because I'm still learning life myself. But these philosophies and feelings and emotions are what pave me forward and help me get through. But everyone is winging it, and some of the best people that come out in the world on top have just winged it to the top, not in a careless fashion. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying be careless and thoughtless. I'm saying just never hold yourself back and just go for it because the more mistakes that you make in something, the better something's going to be. That's why I'm here 5 years later, still grinding away and just trying to make something happen. Thin margins sometimes, but just keep making it happen. Just keep doing and pushing forward, and that's the best you can do.
That's some very good advice, actually. And I like your idea of kind of being playful with it, rather than it being this big scary monster in the closet, something that you could probably actually befriend, and
Yeah.
work with. And so when I was kind of like checking out your work, I'd come across the name, obviously Flew the Arrow. Tell me about that. That's quite an interesting name.
I know. I guess what I try to describe to people is that for me personally, when it comes to my music, I mean, as I've mentioned, talking about these, um, thoughts and feelings that you can share with the world and your experiences and things. I never really wanted my music to be about me, like my name, my face, here I am, here's my thoughts, here's my emotions. I really want people to tune in and listen to my music and to hold it close to their heart and listen to the words in a way that they can come away from the song feeling like, a little weight's been lifted or have a new perspective to like help me through. And that's the level of like emotion and deep helping that I want to bring and that I believe music does bring to people. Um, and yeah, as I mentioned, I originally wanted it to be a band, I wanted it to be a unit of people. And ironically, over the years, I've never left myself much time or space to collaborate with people. And I'm realizing that now and feel like it's holding me back. And touching on that as well, I feel like the name in some ways can hold me back or does hold me back because, people might not catch it straight off the bat or people are just like yourself might not just totally understand what it's about. And I guess that's why it's a name the way it is as well, is because I want people to really go on a journey and figure it out for themselves. You know, for me, it's about the flight of the arrow,
Mhm.
you know, the endless arrow of time flowing through time in and out of it. And yeah, I'm still figuring it out for myself. But yeah, I guess I originally wanted it to be a band, so I wanted a band name. I didn't want it to all be about me, so I wanted it again for that cause and to be about people. But yeah, I'm trying to let the songs speak for themselves and let the name speak for themselves, speak for itself, and just let people, because the best songs are ones which really just speak to someone and let them decipher how they think and feel about the words that they're hearing and the melodies and these things. So I guess it's pretty straightforward in my head to a degree, but obviously it takes some explaining sometimes. So yeah, I can understand. But I like to feel like, you know, it might intrigue people, you know, oh, that's something different, or who is that person? And really when I question it, you know, then I think to like people that have been a massive influence on me, like the early contemporary songwriters I mentioned, City and Colour, Tallest Man on Earth, Bon Iver, all these people have like cool band names, you know, but people just accept that as their name. Oh, that's that person. So then I try and like not have that imposter syndrome thing with my name and be like, oh, you know, should I put it back to my own name? Should I put my face on an album cover? Which is something I do struggle with sometimes, you know, when I feel like maybe I'm holding myself back by having a more obscurity. But for all that it might hold me back, I prefer the depth that it might give to a listener. You know, like the people that really listen or the people that will really become your fans. And, you know, if someone's just skimming over the top and, you know, just doesn't think much about the name or that and doesn't connect with it and listen, then, you know, that's fair as well. But I like to think it gives more depth and allows the listener to go on a wee journey for themselves and experience it for themselves, you know?
And I couldn't agree more. I know that, personally, like within my own blog, I've kind of chopped and changed the names and stuff, and I finally landed on kind of putting my face to it. But in an age of sort of fast fashion, if you will, and a lot of people will just skim over the top of music, or they'll only listen to one song of an artist. I think there's something quite important, and it's a lost art that we seem to have of like actually getting to know the artist, whether that is just one person or it's a band. We tend to kind of just go, all right, okay, I like the song, add it to the playlist and forget about it. Whereas
Yeah.
actually prompting that introspection, it
It's
can lead
this
to something quite interesting.
consumerist approach, sorry, that the industry has created for, you know, for streaming and for music. You know, some could argue it's the best or the worst thing that's ever happened, whether for the artist or not. But as you say, it sort of, you know, does can take away you know, that connectivity between an artist. But really, it should be used as a vessel. You know, it should be used to discover. It should be a vessel of discovery. And you find an artist that you love, and you go down a wee rabbit hole with them. You find the band camp, you buy something. You know, that's the way it should be. That's the way the economy should be. But you know, the big companies make too much of streaming and so forth. So I guess that's another reason I like a little bit of obscurity and like people to really fight for it a little bit, whether it's you know, like my own name is Flew the Arrow and things, you know, you want people to really um sort of earn that listenership in a way that they've accepted it into their life. And yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, no, totally. Again, I couldn't agree more, and I think that there's again, it is a bit of a lost art in terms of actually that getting close and personal with the artist and finding out a bit more of them as a person. And you'd kind of sort of touched on this earlier. It reminded me of a Rick Rubin interview that I watched recently. And he talks about this idea that our creativity it's like a form of devotion. It's like a divine offering, this kind of gift that we're given. Um, and our creative practice is something kind of out with ourselves. What does the creative practice look like for you?
Sorry, in terms of how I actually work, or
Yeah, yeah.
oh, that might be the most difficult question. I mean, depends whether you're talking about me as a musician or as an organizer or that, or just all encompassing, like what is my life like as a working
Well, I
musician?
suppose, yeah, I suppose that could be an interesting turn on it then, because as a working musician, you can't dedicate 100% of your time to the craft, so
Yeah.
you have to kind of chop and change. So what does that look like for you, and how does that impact? your creative work as well?
Yeah, so obviously you need to be at a certain point in your career to be living off your original material, to a degree, and that's always something that's weighed on me. I knew early on choosing this path that it would be an arduous path, and I've learned over the years, not to take things to heart, and that it's a long game here, and really, I've learned that it doesn't have to be the be all and end all. I don't have to make it because that's not really what I want. I want to have a sustainable life where music is a big part of my life and I'm getting to either perform or record and share my music with the world, so that I can do that no matter what stage of my career I'm at. And that is the heart and soul of what I do, because without that, as a songwriter, as Flew the Arrow, I wouldn't be doing anything else. I wouldn't be here now and contributing to my culture in such a way, um, that I am. Um, sorry, I lost my track of thought there.
You're all good. Yeah, no, but I think you hit kind of the nail on the head there in terms of like you do have to balance both. And again, in an earlier interview that I'd had, there is that element of sacrifice
Yeah,
that you make.
yeah. Exactly. I mean, you've got to kind of have a brazen attitude to that and just know that you're following your passions and you're doing it. But yeah, along the way, you might realize that, it might not be sustainable. So you need to do different things. And I think it's very important in this day and age to be doing multiple things. I mean, a professional shouldn't have to do multiple things just to keep a roof over their head. But in some ways, it is pushing us to be more innovative in a way. Like maybe if I made like a profitable life off of my own music entirely, I wouldn't, be grafting away at Gathering South or that. I'd be able to just be an artist, be a songwriter, which seems like a beautiful, idyllic thing, but I think I might get bored. You need to be out experiencing life, being part of your community. So, in a way, I'm obviously so thankful that I've, my other projects to keep me going and to keep me busy in the times that I'm not writing and things like that. But yeah, in light of sorry, in terms of like not making much off my original music, I've actually fallen back over the past 5 to 10 years on a lot of pub gigs. So like I'm a working musician in that sense. I've done about four this week, and I'm trying my best to make these new relationships with pubs and bars and to make a sustainable life that way. But I've done that quite heavily before lockdown, and what I found is that it's a couple of pints usually helps get me through the gig. I'm not a massive drinker, but when I come to a gig, it just it helps the experience to a degree. But that's the reason I bring it up is because as a songwriter, I was finding myself lagging on days where I finally had free. Even if I have just had 2 pints, if you're gigging 3 nights a week, that can add up, and the time that I was spent was then affecting me feeling like a songwriter and feeling like an artist and actually being one. So it's trying to create this life balance. Now I'm in my early 30s and I've been doing it all about 10 years and trying to make a sustainable life financially from the pub gigs in order that I can, live life more as an artist and have better financial security so that I can write songs more. But there's little messy bits in between that, I'm still trying to work out and just balance life out in such a way, you know. Um, but even through Gathering South, like being through the pub gigs and Gathering South, I do a lot of speaking to people and speaking to audiences and trying to be an entertainer to a degree. So I've ended up hosting and presenting and things like that as well. So something I never considered myself doing, but as I said earlier on, you just got to keep going with your passions, doing what you're doing. You never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to talk to, where it's going to lead to, other aspirations and dreams that will come along the way. So it's not a full-time thing that I'm doing with the presenting or hosting, but I'm getting some opportunities here and there, and it's just extra little bits of work. So really that is my life as a songwriter and as a working musician and doing all the pub gigs and as an event organizer, and they lead to loads of other things like festivals and collaborations and you know but I'm at the stage right now, as I mentioned, I'm trying to create all these new connections and relationships and get more gigs so that I can have more security in that way, because things have been a bit rocky for my career. I usually, off the back of realizing that the pub gigs like might affect me as a songwriter, I decided I quite like a day job. So I used to work for a festival for 4 years, and then the festival dissolved unfortunately last year, and then I managed to get a job managing a venue, and then 4 months in, things were going great, and the owner just decided to randomly cut my role altogether. So there was like two career fallbacks, and that's I've kind of been set back the last 6 months. So that's why I'm finally getting back to things and trying to get that security so I can focus on other things, so things can just tick over. Um, and another major thing I'm doing is try to prepare for funding for my album, So amongst all these other things, I'm trying to find the time to do that because it's such a big task. And as I mentioned, the heart and soul for me is my original music, and without that, nothing makes sense. So at this stage, I'm just being held up. I'm doing a few gigs and I'm writing here and there, but I've got an album, and I feel like I want to get that album out into the world to share it and to try and progress with my career as Flew the Arrow. So that's the threshold that I'm at right now, doing all these different things. But really, I just want to get that album out, and I feel like I've finally achieved, first like major cornerstone in life. But besides the folk award we gathered in the South, which is a big key moment of my life so far. I hope to get that album out, whether it's successful or not. It doesn't matter. I'm just getting more music out into the world, and I want to set up tours and things. I've got other aspirations, so there's a whole world of encompassing things, but as I say, it's important to do multiple things as long as you're not burning yourself out at the end of the day. We need to be mindful and look after ourselves, but we can only do what we can do.
Definitely, and I think that's some very good advice about not burning the candle at both ends. Something I know that myself and many others are guilty of, when you're having to do kind of everything at once, and I feel like that's definitely the landscape of kind of at least emerging creatives. You have to work a day job, do your craft, keep up life as well, and it can be quite difficult to do all those things at once. But you sort of touched on it there. I just want to round off by asking, what's next for you? You mentioned the album and hopefully getting some tours together. Have you got anything kind of in the near future?
Yeah, well, so it's also depending on that funding. Obviously, you might have heard things have been a bit ruckus on the funding front recently.
Yeah.
I've actually spent like I first learned about all the funding in Creative Scotland when I first went to college to do sound production. We learned about a music business when I was like 17, and I'm 32 now, so I've known about it that long, and it's something I've always held back on, felt like ill-equipped for it, like I'm not ready for it and stuff. So I was finally, after all these years, at the stage of my life ready to tackle it, and I have been these last few weeks, and then got the news about the funding. So that's a kicker for the whole country, and for all the creatives. But for me personally, I was finally at that stage after waiting, and I couldn't believe, when I finally was doing it within that very small space of time that it was taken away. But anyway, regardless of that, I've high hopes that that will get fixed and it will come back. So I just need to keep trucking on with this preparation. I'm still just doing all the prep work so that I can hopefully hand it over to someone who's helping me with it. Because as mentioned, I'm at that threshold, of like I really want and need to release this album so that I can hopefully get to the next stage that I'm looking at. So in terms of Flew the Arrow, I've done, some cool gigs recently, like supported Martin Carthy from the Watersons, who's a massive figure in the folk revival from the early days, and had another nice week. I get the Hug and Pint the other night there, and I've got some cool gigs here and there. But I'm hoping to get more gigs for my original music by the time I release an album, and balance things out with some less pub gigs and more original music gigs. So that's the stage I'm at creatively with Flew the Arrow, and I've sort of got the band together. Everyone's agreed to it. It's just everything's pinning on getting that funding in place so that I can be like, right, let's get into the studio and let's make it happen. Because unless all your bandmates are your best friends, you need to pay people, and all these people are top-notch musicians that I'm so unbelievably proud that they've said that they're up for collaborating with me on the record. So I want to be able to pay them properly, to make it happen. So yeah, I want to get making music, I want to get recording music, and it's all pinning on that funding. So I just need to keep trucking on. And right now with that, with the preparation and getting some little gigs here and there, I've got a nice So Far Edinburgh gig on Thursday, which I'm looking forward to. It looks like a really beautiful venue. So I'm buzzing for that. Besides that, we gather in the South. It's a monthly folk club now. Last year I've done it every 6 weeks. And then after the folk club award, there was so many people want to play that I was like, I could book out a whole year here. And I did. I was completely astounded. I never ever thought that would be possible. I used to do one at a time every 6 weeks, just book one as I went. And then went from that to like 12, or sorry, 11 sessions in a row this year, pretty much. And there's still people want to play and book next year, so touring acts and people that I'm big fans of, and it's not just local anymore. I've been hosting people from all around the world the last few years, big people that I'm a fan of, like Mama's Broke and I even hosted the guy Sean Dager who done all the soundtrack to the Assassin's Creed Black Flag video game. So it was really cool to be working with these mad artists, people that want to, come and play. So right now, I'm just holding back to figure out what my life's going to look like next year, where I'm going to be at with this funding and this album, and then figure out how I'm going to pan out Gathering South for the next year. And then I can try and envision my life between both projects, and then fit in all the pub gigs and festivals and work in between there to sort of just try and be successful in life to a degree. But that's hopefully where I'm going, continue with the monthly folk club, get my own album out, and just keep trucking on.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you certainly have heaps in the pipeline to keep you busy. And it's been a pleasure to hear all about it. Yeah, thanks very much for coming on. And just for anyone who's listening, do take the time to check out both Gathering South and Lee McGilvary on socials. I will be sure to link them in the description. So yeah, thanks very much for coming on, and I'll hopefully catch you next time.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Nate. It's been a pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.